So welcome back to another template design video, and in this one we're going to look at my personal favourite of all the templates, which isn't a Raynor template. It's actually based on a design by Coore and Crenshaw, and for that reason I've termed it the Coore Crenshaw template. It's based on their 7th at Trinity Forest, but also you'll find it on numbers of their other designs, including Streamsong Red. What it's really asking you to do is challenge a boundary line, play left to go left basically. But there's a number of nuances that come into play, particularly with camber and where you angle the green, that I think make it perfect for a par 5 design in this game. So this one's going to be all me. You'll see all of the holes where I've used this in a few different ways, and hopefully you enjoy it. It's by a mile my favourite design to use. So looking here at the 18th at Strathlorne, and from the very outset building this course I knew that this was the hole that I wanted to finish on, because it's an intently heroic hole as well as being very strategic. The basic premise is you want to go left to hit left, and the green being on the left hand side is receptive to you making this really brave carry over here. It doesn't always have to be a carry, it can sometimes be challenging a boundary line. Coore and Crenshaw are often used out of bounds on the left, or at Streamsong Red there was a river just to that left hand side of the fairway. So the closer you play towards that big hazard, the better your reward, which is pretty common for many of these template holes. Where this gets more interesting is what happens if you eschew that challenge and you go further right. Well, the further right you go, you're hitting more towards the hazard, so you're hitting more at the cliffside rather than across it. You're also having the ball right above your feet, which is going to push it further left. Basically everything is making the ball want to go towards the water, and the green is angled a little bit more away from you as well. For this reason, one of the things that I think is really important when building this hole is for it not to be too long, and 520 to 550 is a maximum I think is perfect for this one, because you want people even into wind or into a crosswind who bail out right to still have that question of should I go for it or not, because it's a short par 5, they think they should make it in 2, and yet it's a really perilous approach with all the danger left. So I think that's the first key thing to bear in mind, is you want the camber, you want to offer that line left, but you really have to have people going for the green even if they bail out, so design this with wind in mind as well. So the next aspect of interest is if they choose not to go for it on the approach, where are they laying up? And again, Coore and Crenshaw make this decision interesting. If we look at the green slopes, the green typically slopes from right to left, as you guess. Everything on this hole goes the same direction, which again means that if you're approaching from this side, the further down you are is actually a worse layup zone, because you're playing down the slope of the green, which is going to make a pitch shot, which they will often allow this landing zone right here, let you play into that, because they know that you're basically snookering yourself for your next shot, which is a pitch over a mound or bunkers typically, which are in play to basically prevent you from bouncing the ball in if you're on the wrong side of the fairway. And they allow that shot because they know that it's going to be tough, if it's not impossible, but it is definitely a tricky recovery shot. So all of this is based on one very simple aspect, which is your camber from right to left, as well as making the most of a boundary hazard. In terms of this one, what I liked the most was also the way that you have this land short does allow you, if you're on the right hand side, to land a ball just here and feed it onto the green. It's tricky, but it can work. There's also, if you're on the left hand side, because this land dips down a little bit, can allow you, if you're quite far back, to hit a long club, kind of kill it in this slope and roll it up gently onto the green without firing it over. So there's a lot of subtlety in here as well, and you can see there's different pin positions on here. The one that is back right is probably the trickiest to access, but generally this is a hole where you want to make birdie and you feel you could make eagle, but there's very much double bogeys in play as well if you go really badly wrong. And for me, that's the essence of a really good par 5 design. So in order to demonstrate this, I've put myself on the right hand side of the fairway with the prevailing wind, which was out northwest, so it's going dead across and further compounding the challenge because everything is blowing us left. So now your question becomes, if you do want to go for it, because 246 is well within reach, you don't want to be long, because long is perilous. You don't want to be short, obviously. You don't really want to be right, making that layup. So it's really ramping up the pressure, and everything is pushing you left, so you've got to consider just how far right you want to go. Now, I might even aim all the way up here and take my chances and go, but you're looking at that mound and that could kick you just about anywhere. So we're going to have a go at this. I don't feel supremely confident, but I'm figuring it's going to be pushing itself quite a long way left. As you can see, even with the perfect swing, it's gone miles left straight off the camber, and we've just about made it over, and that is about as good a shot as you can manage from that angle. But you can see the severity of everything that's pushing you further left, and it leads to a really heart and mouth shot, which I think is perfect for an 18th approach. Now the next prototypical design we're going to look at is actually the first time I ever did this hole, which is Greenstone 15th, and it's still one of my favourites of it. Straight away you can see that the main hazard is the river on the left hand side, but you do have a central bunker here that's going to force you to either choose the high side, which as you can tell has more camber, or the low side, which is going to give you that little bit of a better angle in. It's also a short par 5 again, which poses that question of do you want to go for it, do you trust yourself? What you can see particularly from this one is the really high nature of where you're, if you laid up, where that shot would be played from, and you can see that that's going to be a really difficult shot if you choose to go that way. The green on this one is also very small comparatively, with only one little tier, but that back right pin position is very difficult to access. There's then some mounding, as is typical of this hole, on the right hand side. It's a little bit more low profile than Strathlorne's, but it serves the same effect. If you're coming at it from the wrong angle, you're coming more over that mounding. If you're coming at it from the left hand side, you can kind of get around it, even if this one asked you to play a fade. Where I really liked this hole and where I felt it started developing a bit more was thinking, well, let's push people towards just bailing out this side and make them really think about hitting all the way up here towards the right hand side. So we'll try and put ourselves in that position so that you can see what that looks like. First of all, we'll attempt to take the tee shot onto the wider side, and you can see how that land is working. 230 yards to this green with a little area to land in. It's doable, but it is really tricky with a green that slopes away, so people might just go, you know what, there's a load of fairway here, we'll just deal with that splash shot when it comes. So let's have a look at how that looks. First of all, the camber's pushing you towards this bunker anyway, so it's not an easy layup, and then when you do land, it's going to be running all the way down here, and you're potentially in light rough, which makes it hard to control. We're then looking at slopes that run the ball all the way towards the pin, and for this pin, might be doable, but if the pin's the high side of the green, it's definitely trickier. So it is doable, but there's a lot of nuance in how you contour the fairway as well, and how that one aspect of camber can be absolutely maximised with this hole design. And just for fun, let's try this approach and see how we go. So I reckon probably landing it just on is going to be the best we can do, and that might have just gone too far anyway. It slowly trickles down. There we go. Definitely doable, but it will make you think about where you're landing. One of my most recent interpretations of this template is the 14th at Ouarzazate, which is my national treasure course representing Morocco. As you can see, you get most of the features that make this up. Camber going right to left as expected, a green that is angled and also right up against kind of our boundary line, which is a river in this case, and you do have the mounding replaced by a bunker. Where this differs is you do have a little bit of land to land it over the bunker, so that's one change, and the second one is by manipulating the tees a little bit, you can change the angle at which this plays. So if you're playing it from this tee over here, the blue tees, it's still very reachable, but you're playing it more as a standard Coore Crenshaw template. You're going down the left hand side as close as you can and then going at the green, and you've got your best angle. But what I thought made this one really interesting was something as simple as angling the fairway this way, so that the further you went, the more you were hitting at the water, and particularly when you start changing tees to the black tees, which were the standard back tees, we were hitting at the water just that little bit more. Then when we changed it to the white tees, which are also a set of tournament tees, it gave you an option. With the longer drivers you can carry this, and that's probably the way most people will play, but will depend on wind, and if so, you want to be hitting somewhere down here, but the more you're not carrying this very tip of the bunker, which is 287 from the whites, you're staying on that high right side and you are bringing in that camber more and more and more. Whereas if you're carrying this side, you're running down to the low flat and you're getting that beneficial angle and distance. So this one I felt became really interesting with just the 1 or 2 bunker positionings here, but also changing the angle on the tee and where the fairway was cut was subtly different. As for the green, it's relatively forgiving if you spot what it's doing early on. If you're going right at the pin, you're likely to find things difficult, But again, with the angling of these bunkers, if we look at how those are working, you want to be coming in from the left hand side because that means you can cover more of them and then the land's going to kick you this way. Whereas if you're coming in from the right hand side of the fairway, well, you can cover slightly less of them before and then it's going to bounce more straight on. So it becomes subtly more difficult based on how the land moves and how the bunkers are. So it is the same template, it's done in probably a different way to how I've managed it before, but still one I really like and a par 5 that I think defends really well. It's a little bit longer as well, this one, because I wanted to encourage people to land the ball and roll on rather than just seeing it as target golf. So a bit more different, and the green is gentler than others of these, kind of to reflect the length of the hole. So the next hole we're looking at here is the 4th at Playa Saona, and this one was always intended to be a very easy course for CC level, and it tended to play pretty well when it was on that. It's quite flat as well, so you don't have quite the camber that you might be expecting, particularly if you lay up over here. However, it's still not an easy splash shot to a green that does run away from you. If we look at the pin, you can see the slopes that are going to feed the ball towards it, but there's a degree of forgiveness there that there maybe isn't with some of the other interpretations of this hole. In terms of what made it interesting, well, you can hit driver, but you're wanting to think about the hazard that happens both long and left, so you're having to really just inch past this bunker, because if you're too far left then you've got the potential of bouncing through and into the water, or you could be saved by a little bit of sand as well. If you did want to lay up, your ideal, you could play 3-wood over here, but you've got to pitch in this pin from here, so it's an option. It's not necessarily as severe in terms of if you choose the wrong option on this hole. You can lay all the way back up here and leave a full wedge right down the throat of the green, which should be a relatively easy shot. But we're here to go for it, so let's have a little look at see how it plays. And if we hit that fast, I'm really interested to see whether that's dead or just about okay. As you can see, it's really dicey, and we've just run into the water, which might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I felt for a drivable par 4 you absolutely needed to have that danger in there, and then you've still got an option of getting up and down for a par, but it's just not easy. And you still have a decent putt at it. So there's a lot of risk reward there. You can play it very sensibly, and it would feel like a must birdie hole, and I felt coming in at hole 4, it's quite early on and you're going to just have people about warmed up enough that they want to go chasing something, and I think putting a drivable par 4 early on can be just as good as putting it down the stretch. So that is our Coore and Crenshaw template, and now you've seen on how many courses I've used it on, you can see that it's quite flexible, but it also provides some of the best holes on each one of those courses, and I'll always try to look and see if there's somewhere that I can use this on there. So I think it's a design that just holds up brilliantly. What's key about this is firstly the angles that you can bring in, the big hazard and how it makes the most of that boundary line, whether it be water, cliffside, whatever, and it's a carefully angled green which really tempts that second shot and players to bite off a little bit more than they can chew. It's an absolute favourite design of mine, and I'd urge you to try it out if you possibly can, because it teaches you so much about how land movement can work to both help and hinder a player. I hope that this has been enjoyable and you've taken something from it. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.